Welcome to Babylon Brews, deep thoughts fermented over time and text. I'm coming at you, Aaron Crude Juice for Verk, and I've got Gumby.
Hola.
We've got Dr. David Falk.
Hello.
How are you doing, good sir?
Doing excellent. How are you?
Very good. We loved what we had last time, and so we needed a second dose.
Awesome. And I'm here to give you a second dose.
There's a lot to catch up on, and I'm looking forward to it.
Sure.
But to start out, we brought out a nice brew. This one's from Great Lakes. Make a splash, letting in some paradise and discover a golden oasis of tropical fruit notes. It's a hoppy hideaway you'll want to escape to again and again. It's an ABV of 6.0 and an IBU of 60. This is TropiCoastal from Great Lakes.
This can is awesome.
Yeah, right? The can's a little confusing because, to be honest, pretty sure I'm about to drink a fruit punch.
It's very,
It's colorful.
First sip, always out of the can. Always out of the can, Aaron.
Why break with tradition? Yeah.
It's really good.
I do like the can.
And I'm not a big IPA guy, but this has got body to it, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's heady. I will say it's a little bit hazy going through it, though. It's got that nice light color, little yellowish. Nice head in the top, not too heady.
Mm-hmm.
I like hazy beers.
Yeah, I agree. It's a nice flowery note, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice and light. Very tropical. It does have that tropical fragrance coming off of it.
Yeah, I like it because it's not overly hoppy. I can't drink overly hoppy beers.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah, that's good. There's a little bit of fruitiness to it, some citrus.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of evens it out. That's nice.
Do you enjoy IPAs, Dr. Falk?
I do, but I don't drink many anymore.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm managing diabetes. So for me, I'm off the beers and onto the whiskeys.
Whiskeys are good.
We do whiskeys.
We definitely do whiskeys. Pretty much almost all the bottles behind me right here are whiskey.
Awesome.
We'll do that with a cigar.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So, Dr. Falk, we'd love to hear about things that have changed in your life since we've talked to you since last time, because you've been exploring new avenues, new ideas. You have a new person on your podcast now to answer certain questions.
Are you talking about the sock puppet?
I totally am.
Apparently he's not a guitar.
Hardly new. You can see the sock puppet behind me by the picture, but he's also on our mug. And his name is Mr. Empty Conjecture. He was introduced in one of our popcorn reviews, where we did a review on Ancient Aliens, the Ark of the Covenant. And he's patterned after Gorgios Tsoukalos, which is the guy that shows up on the Ancient Aliens that has the fanned out hair. And he keeps saying, could be, and that's Mr. Empty Conjecture's byline, which is, he just says, could be. And he's kind of become a fan favorite on the channel.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can relate to him.
Well, Ancient Aliens is all facts, so.
Of course, yeah. All fact. No empty conjectures there at all.
No. We're not saying it's aliens. It's just aliens.
It's just aliens, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I think last time you were on, we were ripping apart patterns of evidence pretty well.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, there's still lots to rip on that. They're coming out, though, with a fourth one.
Really?
Wow.
Yes. Yes, they are. On the location of Mount Sinai this time.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we might be doing another review of that movie.
That sounds good. We're open. Because I think we only covered the first one and I think a little bit of the second one in the last podcast. So there we go.
Yeah, there's now 4. There will be 3 was divided into 2 parts.
Okay.
And that was showcasing the Ron Wyatt's theory, which was now being espoused by Glenn Fritz, that the Israelites crossed the sea, the Gulf of Aqaba, instead of, they say, the traditional Reed Sea crossing.
Okay.
Which is located in the traditional one's located in the northwest Sinai, whereas Ron Wyatt's version and Glenn Fritz's version is from the east coast of the Sinai across the Gulf of Aqaba and into Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And it's a really whack theory. Really whacked.
It sounds like it.
Could be.
It could be, yes.
Well, before we progress to other questions, we deeply regretted last time not getting to your ideas on, the Egyptian alcoholics. So,
yes.
so we'd love to hear more about that.
They were splendid alcoholics. Well, they had several Egyptian beverages that were alcoholic. Okay. They had beer, and then they had several varieties of wine. Now, they had your typical Egyptian beer was malted barley that was brewed just like the beer of today. Okay. So it wasn't carbonated; it was drank flat. And it was typically, I'd say, fermented for about 3 days. It was generally a very, very low alcoholic beer. And it was really intended to be a method of water purification.
Oh, wow.
So what the Egyptians discovered very, very early on was that those who drank from the river were less healthy than those that drank from wells, and they were less healthy than those who drank beer. And what you had here is increasing levels of water purification.
Right. That makes sense.
It does, because when you heat up the grains to make beer, you are in effect purifying the water of parasites and bacteria.
I have heard that theory before.
It's the same reason why I say during the 19th century when Chicago had that cholera outbreak, they discovered the vector of it was in the tap water. And the way they discovered it was in the tap water was those who were drinking beer in the pubs, they weren't getting sick.
See?
Ultimately, they found out that the water lines and the sewage lines were connected.
I'm going to go home and tell my wife, Dr. Falk says this is a health drink.
Healthiest drink around.
Healthiest drink around, yes.
Here's to health.
Right. That's
typically your Egyptian beer was only about 1 to 3% alcohol. It was very, very low in alcohol.
Okay.
Now, with that said, they could spike the beer. And how they did this was they would add dates.
Oh, sugar. Yeah.
Sugar.
Yep.
It's equivalent to adding a sugar wash.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So they could get it at that point up to 5 or 6%. Now, the next step up from beer was wine. Egyptians never got drunk on beer. Because you'd have to drink so much of it that it really was... it really wasn't a feasible way. When the Egyptians wanted to get smashed or hammered, they drank wine.
Okay.
And there were several grades of wine. You had your plunk, which was your date wine. Okay, that's kind of your plunk of wines in Egypt. It was pretty potent. It was pretty alcoholic, but it didn't taste that good.
Really? Because dates were pretty tasty.
Well, it's like drinking a sugar wash.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you don't have anything in a sugar wash other than the sugar, it's potent, but it's kind of like drinking prison wine. It's just not not there.
Egyptian hooch.
So it's Egyptian hooch.
Okay, that makes sense.
The upper class who wanted to get drunk would drink wine from grapes.
Okay.
So they'd have vineyards, grow red grapes, and they'd basically make red wine. And that's what your typical Egyptian, say, elite would get hammered on.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay?
Fascinating.
And then there's actually a high-class wine above that, which was pomegranate wine.
Oh.
Very special, very expensive. You didn't just get drunk on this stuff. This was your highest echelon of beverage.
Okay.
Okay?
Pomegranates are delicious.
Oh, yeah. Pomegranates are yummo.
Oh, yeah.
And the wine they make is very good. Okay?
Huh.
So they are excellent for making wine. It's just labor intensive, expensive, and difficult to produce.
Okay.
So only the rulers drank that, I assume.
Only the rulers drank that, or the high priests.
Oh.
Very, very rarely during certain festivals, like at the festival of Heliopolis, they would give out samples to some of the worshippers to get them into temple.
Okay.
Because at Heliopolis, you had so many temples there that the cults were competing with each other. So one of the ways they sort of drew people in is to give them a taste of this exclusive wine.
I love it.
Yeah. So benefits package.
Benefits package, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That is so evangelical.
Now, they also did something else to their wine too, which was mixed it with lotus flowers or lotus juice.
Oh.
This gave the wine a psychotropic effect.
Really?
So it would cause hallucinations. You see these pictures of elites drinking from a wine vessel with a long straw, a long ceramic straw. At the end of that straw was kind of a filter to strain out the petals of the lotus plant. So they take the lotus flowers, just stuff them in this wine, have it seep, and they'd go on this magical hallucinogenic trip.
So the Egyptians were shroomin'.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
This is where we
They did have access to certain narcotics.
Okay. So they probably
They
did.
also had access to opium,
Oh.
which they imported from Cyprus.
Okay. So they probably did see gods.
and ancient aliens.
And they
They saw a lot of things.
Yeah. So, I got two kind of quick questions. One, is it safe to say that the Egyptians then invented beer? Did they invent our first, what we know today as beer? And two, was that based out of what you said earlier because they needed to filter water?
Okay, they probably didn't invent beer because we have archaeological evidence that beer predates that by several thousand years.
Oh, wow.
Okay? They've been making beer as long as they've been cultivating barley, essentially.
Okay.
Okay.
And that goes easily back 10, 12,000 years. So we find evidence of brewing going back to ancient Mesopotamia, Turkey, and ancient Egypt. So they didn't invent beer,
Okay.
but they certainly loved their beer.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And you can actually go to the Giza Plateau near the Great Pyramid of Khufu and see these giant pits that were dug to make the fires to put in the cauldrons to make beer. Massive batches of beer. Because beer was also used as offerings to the deceased and to the gods.
Yeah, I heard that. Like, didn't certain pharaohs have like their own brew specific to them?
Well, the pharaohs generally drank wine.
Okay.
So we have wine dockets from various tombs in Kings Valley.
Mm.
And every year that the king would build his tomb, he'd put in another vintage.
Fascinating.
This is one of the ways we can date how long these kings reigned. Because we can look at those dockets and see, say, year 5 of Horemheb, the year of the cow. Here's this batch of wine.
That makes dating very convenient.
It's very convenient, yes.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
Right, that's good. Fascinating. Which even dispels more of the patterns stuff.
Yeah, it does, actually.
Yeah, fascinating.
Because you can't compress the chronology in the way, say, David Rohl suggests, because now you're having to deal with all this extra evidence, such as the wine dockets.
Yeah.
You can't telescope it in the way that he wants to suggest it.
Fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, the more and more evidence you drum up, the harder it is to crunch those numbers.
Well, he has to resort to overlapping dynasties, too. And some of these dynasties were very powerful. Like, he has to overlap the 20th dynasty of Ramses III with Shoshenq I.
Oh.
Now, the two capitals are a stone's throw away from each other. The capital of, say, the 20th dynasty is at P. Ramses. The capital of the 21st dynasty is in Tanis. They're just down the river from each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Jeez.
They're both building monuments at Karnak Temple upstream. They both have these administrative apparatuses. Huge administrations, both of them. Egypt was a country run by bureaucrats out of Memphis. Are the two administrations time-sharing office buildings at Memphis?
It could be.
Could be.
Yeah. Man.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But there's all this evidence, such as the wine dockets, date labels. We find inscriptions on personal stelae, a huge apparatus of people who say they served ex-king at this time. It's just, it's just when it sounds okay if all you're doing is taking the chronology.
Right.
You can say, okay, maybe there's some plausibility here. But when you start comparing that chronology to associated biographies, administrators, viziers, each king had 2 viziers.
Right.
Yeah. Each of those viziers is supposed to be governing a region. He's the prime minister after the king. Well, how many prime ministers are running around this country?
Right. Fascinating. That's good.
Wow.
Yeah. That's cool. So, we'll get to the additional patterns of evidence films on our next one. Because
sounds good.
Because we'll wait for the other one to drop, and then we'll just do like the 3 and 4 together, kind of like we did 1 and 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Because that's going to be fantastic. So, I had those 3 questions for you.
Okay.
So, one was, and I know you've done explanatories on this before, but a lot of people like to equate the different Egyptian gods to Jesus and show that they're just simply trying to retell Egyptian stories through Jesus and trying to show how the different Egyptian gods are just simply retellings, or Jesus is retellings of these gods. Can you dive into that thought process a little bit and dispel some of those?
Okay. Well, it all works out to this. I've heard people like Kara Cooney try to make a justification for this, and it boils down to that they're making these comparisons based upon vague generalities, faulty comparisons, and parallelomania. Now, for those who don't know what parallelomania is this is when you take cosmetic similarities and try to establish an ontological, basically a one-to-one choral connection between them. The connection of causation.
Okay.
Okay? The fact is, like, for example, I was just listening to Kara Cooney today, and she was talking about how Christianity developed in Egypt after the death of the apostles. Okay? But you have to then say, okay, well, what aspect did religion in Jerusalem then play?
Right.
Okay. Are we really, I mean, did Christianity get its start in Alexandria, or did it get its start in Jerusalem? Okay.
Yep.
This is what we're talking about with Christianity is an Israelite religion.
Right.
Now, the Old Testament has some influence with Egyptian religion. There's no question about that. We're not arguing that. Okay, there is connection. Like, for example, Psalm 104 is based upon the hymn of the Aten. There's no question about that. Nobody argues that. We do know a lot of the ritual practices that were used in the Old Testament. They got while the sons of Israel lived in Egypt. Saw how Egyptian priests did things, patterned it much after that. You know, for example, take the law where they don't eat pig.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's not a Semitic custom. That doesn't come from Canaan.
Okay.
Canaanites all ate pig. It's a custom they got from Egypt. The Egyptians don't eat pig.
Okay.
So that's where they got that custom from. And when they went into the Sinai, God said, hey, you didn't eat pig before? Great, fantastic. Continue doing that.
Very good.
Okay, so we do know that there is some Egyptian influence in Israelite religion. The rub here is that when we start comparing Jesus, who is sort of, there's a trajectory here of then Israelite religion that has its own imperatives, its own beliefs, and its own sort of rituals. And then you come to Jesus and then you say, oh, wait, hold it. He got it all from Osiris. Then we kind of got to go, let's examine the details. Because once you start looking into the details of these comparisons, they fall to bits. Like, for example, the famous one. Well, you know, Osiris, you know, he was raised by Nephthys and Isis. He wasn't raised on his own. You know, Jesus, you know, he wasn't raised on his own. He was raised by God the Father. So we have two gods raising this deceased God to become a god of the dead. See, it's the same. Absolutely the same.
Identical.
Identical. Except when you start looking at the details. Like, for example, in the case of say, the resurrection of Osiris, he's not raised in this life. He's raised in the heavenly realm. And the body he gets is in the heavenly realm, not the physical earthly realm. Jesus Christ is resurrected in the tomb. On this planet.
In the corporeal world.
In the corporeal world, the physical world.
That makes sense.
And the stone rolls away and he walks out of the tomb. Hi, guys.
Yep. That's a stark difference right there.
Yeah.
The stark difference right there. The second thing is, when you look at how Jesus was resurrected, the text is very, very clear who raised Jesus Christ. The Father raised Jesus Christ. The Holy Spirit raised Jesus Christ. Jesus raised Jesus Christ. And then it says God raised Jesus Christ. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. All three persons of the triune God, the Trinity, raised Jesus Christ.
That's cool.
It was the Godhead that raised Jesus Christ. But if you selectively cherry pick your evidence from the New Testament, then you can make these cosmetic comparisons with Osiris.
Okay. Yeah,
And there are cosmetic similarities if you cherry pick.
Yeah, if you stay at the surface.
Yeah. I mean, you could almost do the same thing if you use Superman, though.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Because Superman died and was resurrected, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But you can make all sorts of cosmetic similarities. That's the problem with cosmetic similarities, is the human mind is attuned to pick out patterns.
Okay.
This is why we call this in ancient Near Eastern studies parallelomania. You're drawing parallels that aren't causative, but they look so similar until you start scratching beneath the surface.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
Why? Just to detract Christianity? Just to undermine it? Or just from a research standpoint, just to say, hey, look, they're similar, and everyone else did this, these cultures did this, and that's why they all did this, and Christianity's no different. Is that why?
Well, it is. It does boil down to that, say, Christianity is not unique. It's to make it basically that's the problem with the faulty comparison. You make a faulty comparison with something else to elevate or denigrate another item.
Yep.
Another idea. And it's a well-known logical fallacy. But it is rife within this, say, mythicist worldview.
Yeah. The new atheist.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because if you look at, and this is where I go back and forth, because I've actually known some very good, genuine atheists I could talk to. They're more agnostic, really. They're not truly atheist, because a true atheist is more religious than even we are.
Well, I mean, I've met atheists. I mean, frankly, before I went to seminary, most of my friends were atheists. Mm-hmm. So I had very little contact with Christians outside of my local church back then.
Yeah.
So most of my coworkers, most of my friends, the people I went out and hung out with at the various clubs I attended to, they were all atheists.
Yeah.
Most of them just didn't care.
Oftentimes.
Yeah. It wasn't that they were zealous atheists. They just didn't care.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I got along with that kind of atheist just fine.
Yeah.
I could relate.
Yeah. I have a few friends that are more on it's really an agnostic atheism. They're not saying that there is no God. They just don't care if there is. It's not part of their worldview.
It's not part of their worldview. It's not part of their concerns. Doesn't matter to them one bit.
Yeah. So in fact, many of them try to avoid the whole conversation because they don't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the angry atheist, and there's a whole new breed of those that are out right now.
Oh, I've had some run-ins with those. They don't like the work I'm doing.
Good. Keep going.
I must be doing something right.
That's a sure sign, man.
And it's funny because there's so many, they like to point out Christians' logical fallacies, but if you turn the mirror in, there's an equivalent amount, if not more so, of those logical fallacies.
Well, a lot of these new atheists were essentially once fundamentalists that deconverted. They deconstructed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, you can take a fundamentalist out of their church, but you can't take their fundamentalist mindset out of them. So when they do deconvert, they're still fundamentalist in mindset. They just are now atheists that are behaving like fundamentalists.
Makes sense.
So, for example, when I do a lot of work on the Exodus. And when I talk to atheists, they're approaching this with essentially a fundamentalist view of the Exodus. Not, say, a scholarly view of the Exodus, or even a text-based view of the Exodus, but the traditions that they were brought up with within the church.
That makes sense.
And so when they debate this in public, they will default to the fundamentalist understanding they had growing up as a Christian.
Yeah.
So my biggest challenge when I engage these people is say, okay, what does the text say? And try to get them back into the text to be able to have a meaningful dialogue.
Yeah. And then what's the corroborating supportive evidence for it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We pause right there. We're going to do a word from our sponsor.
Have you ever wanted to train Muay Thai? Perhaps there's no gyms near you. Perhaps you work odd hours. Perhaps, like a few of us, you don't like germs. Whichever way it goes, you can train online with some of the best instructors from around the country, either live or in class with other students. Living Muay Thai gives you the chance to do all of this and much more. So jump into live classes and on demand right now. livingmuaythai.com.
Hey, it's Gumby here from Bible Over Brews. Are you looking to get some editing done in your podcast? Maybe you don't have the hours or time it takes to edit your content, but you still need to get it done. Maybe you need a customized track or a song for your podcast or your next project without having to worry about copyright issues. Well, look no further than soulworkmusic.com, where this footwork is done for you. I'll get that editing, post-production work done right for you, or create you that customized song that fits your project or podcast to help support your life's work. If this sounds like what you need, reach out to me at soulworkmusic.com. Again, that's soulworkmusic.com. And remember, there's nothing taboo over brew. What is that normal default that they fall back into as a fundamentalist in regards to something like the Exodus?
Well, for something like the Exodus, they will typically fall back to a early date of the Exodus, what I sometimes call Sunday school exegesis. Sunday school exegesis. We all, when we were raised, most of us when we were raised in the church, we were unfortunately subjected to really, really bad Sunday school materials, like from David C. Cook. This is probably the big example. You know, where you have, say, Jonah, and he's in the belly of the whale, and there's a table and chair and an oil lamp in there, and he's got all the comforts of home inside the belly of the whale.
Yeah,
or Noah's Ark with the massive head of the giraffe sticking out of the ark, and it's the height of the hull of the ship itself. You know.
Yeah.
I think most people actually miss the whole point of the story of Jonah, because the reason why they compare Jesus, or Jesus compares himself to Jonah, is because if you read the text closely, he died.
Yeah.
And then came back.
Oh yeah. I've done a video on this. I have done a video on, say, that Jonah was dead as a door knocker.
Right.
He was dead. Totally dead.
Yeah.
Dead.
Wow.
Dead.
Yeah.
Osiris kind of dead.
Yeah.
I've never
And, you know,
heard
it's
that.
amazing how many Christians have sort of railed against that. Oh, he didn't die. Oh, yes, he did.
Yeah. It says he was in Sheol.
Jonah chapter 2. He's in Sheol.
Yeah.
He's under the pillars of the deep.
Yeah.
That's the underworld.
Yeah, that part gets left out of the sermons that I've heard on Jonah. Wow.
But that's what makes the sign of Jesus so apropos. That's what makes it so potent.
Absolutely.
Is that, you know, just as Jonah was in the belly of the whale 3 days, on the third day, he shall rise from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it is that comparison.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, so when I hear, say, atheists say, well, how could Jonah find air to breathe? Wasn't a problem.
Right.
Not a problem. He was long beyond needing to breathe at that point. He had bigger concerns at that point than breathing.
Right. He had the hands of the Rephaim bringing him down to greet him.
Yeah.
I personally think VeggieTales got Jonah right, but, you know, I digress.
Oh, VeggieTales. Don't get me started.
Just cool as a cucumber.
But a lot of atheists are coming at this with Sunday school exegesis.
Yeah.
What they learned in Sunday school, the images they were fed, the exaggerations they were told, and they're just carrying that into adult life.
Yeah.
I've seen biblical scholars do this too, where their conception of what the Bible said is the same as the conception they had as a 5-year-old. It hasn't grown any.
Right.
Yes, they're now using scholarly tools like the documentary hypothesis, supplementary hypothesis, text criticism, all that stuff. But their fundamental understanding of the Bible remains the same.
It does make
I think
a ton of sense.
Yeah. It just sort of creates this problem.
Yeah.
And it's a problem we've created ourselves.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. You almost, and I'm not making excuses for anyone. I mean, everyone's own faith journey is their own. But a deconstructed atheist, if they were sitting under bad teachings in theology their whole life growing up, it's almost inevitable though.
Right.
If there's no real solid ground to stand on, when somebody comes and pulls and shakes your carpet, you're going to fall.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Well, I mean, Aaron Raw put this really succinctly when he said that he doesn't he doesn't bother going after Christians who have a philosophical view or a nuanced view of Christianity. He says that's too much work. He goes after the young earth creationists because all he has to do is show the inadequacy of young earth creationism and they flip automatically to atheism.
Yeah. Low-hanging fruit, as it were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he said anyone with a philosophical position in Christianity is very hard to assail.
Yeah.
It's too much work.
Well, I think that's why I really appreciate this type of platform, though, and the work that you do, because not everyone can be a biblical scholar, and like you or like Heiser or like all these great men that we know that do that. So, but to be able to find some middle ground and have something very concrete in their faith, I mean, we have to do something.
Yeah. I've got one more. Before we move on to any other questions, I've got one more thing on Jonah.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
So, the book of Jonah in the Jerusalem Bible. It's a translation that goes back to, I think it's the 1930s, I think. So, it has a very famous author that translated it. Does anybody know who that is?
Not off the top of my head.
I'm going to C.S. Lewis.
Nope. But you're close.
Yeah.
It was J.R. Tolkien.
Oh.
Yeah, J.R. Tolkien.
Interesting.
Yeah, being the immense, professor and scholar that he was, he's the one that translated from the original texts himself the whole book of Jonah in the Jerusalem Bible.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, just a fun fact.
Bet you not many Tolkien readers have read that.
Probably not. But it does read very smoothly.
Oh, sure it does. I mean, he was an incredible translator.
Yeah, it's funny because when they were doing the Jerusalem Bible and they saw his work in the book of Jonah, they said, "Well, could you just help with the editing of the rest of the book?" And he's like, "You can't afford me."
I like it. That's cool.
I have another question.
Hey, can I do one quick follow-up on Osiris?
No, please. Yeah.
Did Osiris, in terms of comparing to Jesus, was there a claim to fame for salvation for people?
Not in the way that would say you would find in Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the claim basically of soteriology in Christianity is you put your faith in Jesus Christ and his finished work of redemption, and you'll be saved. Okay? What the salvation of Osiris is that if your heart is light enough, it's a works-based salvation. But it's a works-based salvation mitigated by magic.
Okay.
So if your heart is too heavy, and it comes down to the scene 100 in the Book of the Dead, where you have the weighing of the heart. You know, you have to see the famous scales there, and there's hearts on one end, and the feather of Ma'at, supposed to be lightness, is in the other half. And Anubis is there checking the scales, and then you got Ammit, the monster who eats the heart if it should fail, if the heart's too heavy.
Okay.
And the whole purpose of the Book of the Dead is to protect and to lighten the heart. So protects the dead through his voyage in the afterlife. Because it's a treacherous voyage. Moving through the sections of the Duat is really, really dangerous. There are demons and perils, and if you don't make it through each section in time, it closes on you forever.
Okay.
So you can really muck up your path to Osiris, to the judgment seat.
Wow.
So are demons in Egyptian lore similar to demons in Christian and Jewish lore?
No.
Okay.
They're different. Okay. Think of demons in Egyptian lore more like the Council of Gods.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, there wasn't all demons in Egyptian lore are called Necheru. So every spirit from the highest god, Amun-Re, all the way down to some shadow in the corner of your grain bin is going to be called a Necher, a god.
Okay.
So within that, there's this massive, say, continuity of from powerful to weak divine beings.
Okay.
Like the choirs of angels.
Yes, sort of, but more in line with, say, like the divine council, where you not only have angels but every other kind of spirit being as well.
Okay.
So, like, you might have watchers and principalities and powers, and what we would call in the Greek daimonia, which are just more servants.
Okay.
So think of it more like that, which is a continuity of beings. Now, some are going to be for you, some are going to be against you, some aren't going to care.
Okay. And did they work specific? Like, did certain demons work for certain deities? Like Osiris?
Yes, some did.
Okay.
Let me give you an example. There's the goddess of healing, Sekhmet.
Oh.
She's a Leonine goddess. Okay, she is the goddess of healing. Now, before that sounds too good. She's the goddess of healing because she's the goddess that gave you your illness in the first place.
Caveat.
Sounds like our pharmaceutical.
And she has 1,000 demons working for you to make you sick.
It might just be me. Is there a small investment you have to make to get better?
Oh, yes. Amenhotep III built a temple called the Temple of Mut. And within the Temple of Mut, he put in there 1,200 statues to Sekhmet.
Okay.
We can presume that he had probably long-standing chronic illness. Because he's giving all these statues to Sekhmet.
Okay. Interesting.
To try to appease her, to take away his illness.
Awfully rich priests.
But this is how deity worked in Egypt, is there wasn't a good deity or a bad deity.
Okay.
Deities were both.
Okay.
Gods in Egypt had a dualistic role. They had what the Egyptians called a good coming and a bad coming.
Okay.
And the purpose of sacrifice and offerings was to orient the good coming towards you and the bad coming away from you.
Okay. So it's a lot like the show Vikings then.
Haven't seen Vikings.
Oh, it's great. There's really no good guys. No, everybody's a good guy. Everybody's a bad guy. So very, very similar.
Probably then. Yeah.
That is very fascinating. Setmet. That's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's good. That's a good question.
No. I mean, just how that can relate to some modern day things of you trust the very people for the medicines that may in fact could be in fact getting you sick. You know.
Except these gods know they're making you sick.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Very fascinating.
So
like the god Happy, the river god Happy. He will basically, he's a god of fertility. He brings the fertility of the land. He also sends a flood that will destroy homes, pull up trees, send dead cattle down the river, sweep you away and drown you.
good dude.
Good dude.
Man, don't take him off. So that's where the tsunamis come from.
He's a river god, though, so they didn't have an ocean god.
Okay. So my next question is: there's a lot of talk back and forth that we keep hearing, and a lot of this will play back into people that are trying to make Egypt far older than what it is, right? So the age of the Sphinx, because I keep hearing that it's two different ages. Is that true? Is that false? Is that...
Oh.
Aaron,
I only have two hands.
Aaron, why did you make our guest unhappy, Aaron?
This is baloney.
Okay. That's what I figured.
This is baloney. All right. Now, the Sphinx is part of the Sphinx Temple complex that leads up directly to the pyramid of Khafre. And that's the second pyramid that was built on the Giza Plateau. You had the big pyramid of Khufu first, then Khafre, the second smaller pyramid, and then you had a third pyramid from Menkaure. Okay. The Sphinx is part of the Valley Temple complex of Khafre. And there was actually a port that went right up to the edge of it.
Oh, wow.
Now, there is some erosion on the Sphinx because the Sphinx is part of a natural embutment of limestone. Now, the whole Giza Plateau used to be, 2 million years ago, a floodplain.
Okay.
And this is what deposited the limestone there. So what you get at Giza in the natural limestone there is these sheets of limestone. A hard sheet, then a soft sheet, then a hard sheet, then a soft sheet, then a hard sheet. You know, in this sort of stacked strata layer. So they carved the Sphinx out of this natural embutment of limestone, more or less. Now, the Giza Plateau experiences a lot of wind erosion. A lot of wind erosion. So there is some erosion on the Sphinx, but it's not water erosion. It's wind erosion.
Okay.
And the soft layers of the limestone have, to be some extent, been eroded. Now, the counterpoint would have been to this criticism that, you know, this is just a natural erosion that took place after the Sphinx was carved during the reign of Khafre, is, well, you know, wind would never erode something like that. Okay? But right nearby the Sphinx is the mortuary temple of Menkaure. which was built after the Sphinx Temple. We know this. This is no doubt about this. Okay? You go up to that smallest pyramid and you look at the temple there, the rocks look like they're Swiss cheese. I mean, like moon crater Swiss cheese. Like 4-foot holes eaten out of the side of the blocks. Massive. I mean, it looks like they're cratered.
Okay.
They don't look anything like shaped stones anymore.
Fascinating.
That's the power of wind erosion. Because the wind is picking up the sand, and that's acting like a sandblaster.
Sweet. That's something
And
else.
limestone's soft. Limestone is soft. So it'll just carve out the softest bits. I got
Man.
some wonderful photographs of that Temple of Menkaure, just showing what the erosion can do there.
Okay. Fascinating.
And the erosion at the Menkaure Temple is much, much worse than even on the Sphinx.
That's fascinating because that's you keep hearing that argument from different people, and they're like, "Oh, look at you can see that it was eroded by water. You can see the Sphinx is actually much older than it ever was." They're lying to you about the dating in Egypt.
No, we do have inscriptions around the Sphinx. There's plenty of inscriptions there to attribute it to Khafre. So, and we have to understand that these pyramids are not anonymous. They're not anonymous.
Okay.
They are surrounded by other tombs. And those tombs are from officials, viziers, say the queen, the queen's involved, the royal mother. You know, all these people, these dignitaries down to scribes are burying themselves around the tombs.
Huh.
This is a national mortuary. This is a national cemetery. The elite of Egypt are creating their tombs around these pyramids, having themselves buried them with their biographies, because the gods have to know who they are to let the gods know how important these people really are. So you're going to get some guy saying, "Oh, I'm Menkaure, a vizier of Menkaure." You know, some of these guys were named after the kings themselves.
Okay.
You know, so you do get these situations where people are, they're naming their kids after these kings. They're being raised in the royal court. Their whole life is oriented around the king. So their death is also being oriented around the king. So you'll go into these tombs and you'll see the cartouches of the king in these officials' tombs. So even if the pyramid itself has no inscriptions at all, we can tell exactly who was buried in that pyramid by who's buried around that pyramid.
Okay. Fascinating.
It's a no-brainer. You go to Khufu's pyramid, who do you find buried around Khufu's pyramid? All Khufu's officials. His mother, Hatep Harris, was buried there. You know, his three of his queens were buried there. You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who's buried in these pyramids.
Okay.
And likewise, in the case of Khafre's pyramid, we have his Sphinx temple, and it's got a Sphinx there, it's got the Sphinx, and it's got a temple there, and a paved causeway that goes all the way up to Khafre's pyramid.
Wow.
And that causeway would have been at one point been lined with sphinxes, smaller sphinxes.
Wow. That would have been a sight to see.
Mm-hmm. If you want to see something similar to that, you can see the Sphinx causeway at Karnak that goes between Luxor Temple and Karnak Temple.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So all these people making these dates up, they're just in denial.
They're just in denial, yeah.
Okay.
They're not following the evidence. They're following a fantasy.
Okay. That
Could be.
Awesome. That's really, really fascinating. Yeah. Do you have any other questions on that side of it?
Mm-mm.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I have this. So there's a certain person that's been appearing on YouTube. That's why I had this other question. It's kind of a big one, but was Atlantis? Did those people progress out of Egypt to create? I'm sorry, come from Atlantis to create Egypt? And do you think that there is evidence that this location, the Rishat that they're talking about, do you think that there is evidence that that is where Atlantis is from, what Plato was talking about?
No.
Okay. No, and that's cool. I would love to hear the rebuttal to it.
Okay, well, what we're dealing here with is an absence of evidence. There is no evidence that connects. First of all, there's no evidence that was ever a city of any kind. Period. It's just looks like a natural formation to me.
Okay.
Okay, so there's no evidence that there was anybody ever living there. Period. Second of all, we actually have a long prehistory of Egypt that goes back, say, at least 12,000 years.
Okay.
Okay. So you're dealing with both. You're dealing here with both several civilizations that preceded the first dynasty of Egypt. You had, say, the Nagata III civilization. And then before that, you had the Badarian civilization. And that's going to take you back to 5000 BC. Then you had Neolithic and Chalcolithic civilizations even before then. So you're talking tens of thousands of years prior to, say, even the first king of Egypt.
Okay. Well, that's a good argument. That's a good rebuttal.
So you're not buying Plato.
I'm not buying Plato. I like Plato. I did study some Platonic philosophy in college. Mm-hmm. But, he has no way of verifying this stuff.
Okay.
So one of the things that I have discovered being a historian is that ancient sources are often terrible for ancient history.
Oh.
So if it's a contemporary source, it's usually very, very good. But if they're talking about stuff that occurred thousands of years before, it's usually really, really bad. This is why I love, say, Josephus for when he talks about, say, the contemporary history of the Romans or the Greeks or the Judeans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very accurate source for that.
Okay.
When Josephus starts talking about the Exodus, it's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It is so bad. So bad.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Because he doesn't have the sources.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I also, rail against people who use, say, the Talmud or the Mishnah for ancient history as well. Because it's the same problem. One of the, for example, people will sometimes use the Seder Olom Rabbah to try to calculate ancient history when it gets its history wrong in many respects. For example, it calculates the Persian period to be about 50 years when it was more like 250 years.
Whoops.
Only a slight difference.
Yeah, a slight difference. We're just quibbling now. Quibbling.
Man. Okay, that's good. Yeah. The Talmud's fascinating anyhow because it's definitely let's say opinionated.
Well, you've got a mix of stuff in there.
Yeah.
You've got some history, but you also have legends, tales. It was meant to be a kitchen sink preservation of their culture. That's really what it is. It's a kitchen sink preservation.
Okay.
So, like, take, for example, the Ark of the Covenant. There are two competing tales of the Ark of the Covenant inside the Talmud.
Oh.
Of what happened to it. One of those tales is that it was buried under the Temple Mount, where it still exists today. The other one is it was melted down for gold scrap by Nebuchadnezzar.
Oops.
They both can't be right.
Right.
Yeah. Which one is more
I know
likely?
which one of those tales I choose.
Well, yeah. Well, we know it's obviously in a warehouse somewhere, so.
Of course, yes.
Which is more likely? I mean, I would think it was melted down personally, but
Well, that's the one I take. I personally thought it was melted down.
yeah.
Okay.
Because, here's the thing with the Ark of the Covenant and any holy object, is it is perfectly, the way you destroy holy objects is by fire.
Okay.
Because fire purifies.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
So that's the only way you can destroy holy objects, is through fire, at least the canonical way.
Yeah.
We still do this. We still do this today.
Oh, we do.
How do you dispose of a flag?
What? Yeah. Fire.
You roll it up and you burn it.
Yeah. Actually, in the Catholic tradition, we have our sacraments and our sacred objects, and you either have to burn it or you have to properly bury it deeply. Is one or the other.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating.
But why won't Atlantis go away then? I don't understand the appeal. I really don't.
Why doesn't counterfeit currency go away?
Because you can still buy stuff if you get away with it, I guess.
Same reason.
Okay.
Why doesn't Atlantis go away? Because people can still buy stuff with it.
So it's, Yeah, okay. All right. Fair enough.
People can still sell books with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Disney. Yep.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and I'm glad I brought you on for that, because there's a huge thing of, I'd say, a small movement, huge rumor, small movement of these people moving forward and saying that the Rishad is obviously where Atlantis was, and they specifically say that that Egypt were the descendants of those people from Atlantis.
Join us in part 2 for the rest of the conversation.